Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm in my 30s and have a decent corporate job that keeps me comfortable. After a decade-long relationship ended, I decided to get back into dating. I live in a big multicultural city, and my ex was an immigrant, so I've always been open to dating people from different backgrounds. I'm not supermodel thin, but I've got a pretty face and never had trouble getting dates when I put myself out there. A few weeks ago, I matched with this guy on a dating app. He was a couple years younger than me, originally from a Latin American country. Right away, he seemed different from the usual crowd. He was charming, intelligent, talked about his family back home, and claimed to have a good profession in his country. The chemistry was instant, both when we talked and when things got physical. On our first date, he was completely upfront about his situation. He told me he was here on a tourist visa, but hoping to find a way to stay permanently. I appreciated his honesty and made it crystal clear that I couldn't help him with immigration stuff. I explained we could have a fun summer thing while he was here, and if he managed to sort out his visa situation or came back legally later, then maybe we could talk about something serious. He said he understood completely and just wanted to enjoy our time together. I told him good, so long we were on the same page. The first few dates were amazing. He was attentive, sweet, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We had great conversations about everything from books to family values. He was physically affectionate in a way that felt natural, not pushy. I started thinking maybe I'd found someone special, even if it was temporary. Then came date number 4. We were texting about my work when he suddenly shifted the conversation. He said he'd been thinking about our arrangement and mentioned that since I had a good job and seemed financially stable, maybe I could be his sugar mommy while he was here. I stared at my phone, sure he was joking, so I sent back a laughing emoji. But then he insisted he wasn't joking and said it would be perfect. I'd take care of him financially, and he'd take care of me in other ways. The blood drained from my face. I asked if he was seriously asking me to pay him to date me. He said it wasn't like that, more of a mutually beneficial arrangement. I told him this was insulting and that he'd been pretending to like me this whole time just to set up some kind of transaction. He brushed off my anger and said I should be flattered that he thought I was successful enough to support someone. I completely lost it. I told him exactly what I thought about men who couldn't support themselves, asking women to bankroll their lives. I said he should be embarrassed to even suggest such a thing, especially after pretending to be interested in me as a person. That's when he got angry and started backtracking. He said I was being too sensitive and that obviously he was joking. He claimed he was just testing to see how I'd react and that I should be smart enough to know he wasn't serious. I asked what kind of sick test that was, but he just kept insisting it was a joke. No apology, no acknowledgement that he'd hurt me, just gaslighting and insults. I was devastated. I felt stupid for believing he actually liked me. I felt insulted that he thought I was so desperate I'd pay for companionship. I took screenshots of the entire conversation and sent them to my closest friends, crying about how I'd been fooled. That's when my friend Sarah decided to dig deeper. She started looking at his social media profiles more carefully. What we found was shocking. He had at least 6 different Instagram accounts using variations of his name, all with different photos uploaded in batches. His Facebook showed the same pattern. Everything looked fake and scammy, but he'd made one crucial mistake. On one of his profiles, he'd followed and tagged his employer, the same employer he was working for illegally on his tourist visa. Sarah pointed out that this guy was running multiple fake profiles and asked why someone would need 6 Instagram accounts unless they were scamming multiple people. She also noticed he'd tagged his workplace and reminded me that he wasn't supposed to be working on a tourist visa since that was completely illegal. I have another close friend who works in law enforcement with the immigration department. I asked her to look up his file just to see if there was anything suspicious. What she found made my blood boil. She told me I wasn't going to like what she'd discovered, He was married with a wife and daughter back home. I asked if she was kidding, but she said she was dead serious and it was all in his file. That was the last straw. This wasn't just some guy who insulted me. This was a married man running multiple fake profiles, working illegally, and trying to scam women into supporting him financially. Sarah and I decided he needed to face what was coming to him. Sarah created group chats on multiple platforms and added every single person from his friends and family lists. She shared all the screenshots of our conversation along with a detailed explanation of what he'd been doing. She wrote about how shameful it was for a married man to be cheating on his wife and trying to exploit women financially. When people started blocking her, she just added more family members and friends. I found his sister's phone number online and Sarah sent the screenshots there too. Within an hour, everyone he knew, including his wife, knew exactly what he'd been up to. About 30 minutes after the online bombardment started, my phone buzzed with a message from him. He said I should be smart enough to know he was joking about the sugar mommy thing and that he didn't need to sell himself to anyone. I didn't even dignify that with a response. But we weren't done. Sarah and I filled out an online immigration reporting form with everything we discovered. His full name, date of birth, home address, employer information photos, and screenshots where he'd admitted to working illegally. Usually these reports sit in a pile for months, but I gave the case number to my law enforcement friend. 2 days later, immigration officers showed up at his apartment. They found him using a phone number that was registered to a local resident. All his roommates had phone numbers registered to the same person, creating a direct link to their illegal employer. During questioning, he received an official caution for attempting to scam me, a no-contact order, and a flag on his immigration file that would likely prevent him from ever returning to the country. His roommates got warnings too. Then the officers visited his employer and found evidence of a massive illegal employment operation. The investigation is still ongoing, but the employer is looking at tens of thousands in fines and possible jail time. The immigration department upgraded his file from flagged to banned for multiple years. He's not getting deported because the government would have to pay for it, and the proceedings would take longer than his remaining visa time. But if he contacts me again, deportation becomes an option. A week later, Sarah showed me screenshots from his family members' social media. His wife had posted about what a disgrace he was to their family. His sister had shared the screenshots publicly, warning other women about him. His reputation back home was completely destroyed. Then he tried messaging me again, saying it was all a big misunderstanding and asking if we could talk. I reminded him that he had a no-contact order and told him to leave me alone. He kept insisting he never meant to hurt me and was just confused about what he wanted. I forwarded the messages to my law enforcement friend immediately. His employer was someone he'd been bragging about working for, claiming they were helping him build a future. Turns out they were just exploiting him and a bunch of other people, and now they're all facing serious legal problems. I heard he's spending his remaining time in the country laying low, too afraid to even go to work anymore. His wife back home has made it very clear that he's not welcome back in their house. His family is humiliated, his professional reputation is ruined, and he can never return to my country. All because he thought a woman with a decent job would be an easy target for financial exploitation. All because he figured he could charm me into paying his way while he cheated on his wife. I'm not sorry for any of it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Inheriting my grandparents' house led to the most insane neighbor drama of my life. But here I am, telling you about how one entitled woman literally burned down my family tree because she couldn't stand looking at it. Let me back up a bit. When my grandparents passed away last year, they left their old house to me in the will. It wasn't like I got everything. My parents and other family members got their fair share too. But I was the one who had always loved that house with its wooden accents and cozy rooms. My girlfriend, who's 4 years younger than me, was excited about the idea of moving in together. We thought it would be like something out of a classic movie, starting our life in this charming inherited home. The house sat in one of those neighborhoods where everyone knows everyone. At first, everything seemed perfect. The neighbors were friendly, waving when we worked in the yard. We felt like we'd found our little slice of paradise. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. Our first clue that trouble was brewing came when we were outside admiring the massive pink ivory tree in our front yard. This thing was ancient and absolutely gorgeous, with this vibrant color that made it stand out against all the other greenery. My grandparents had told me stories about this tree my whole life. It was like a family member to us. That's when we met her. This woman walked up with her hands on her hips, giving us this condescending look that made my skin crawl. She greeted us rudely and immediately started complaining about our tree. She said it was blocking her view and demanded we do something about it. I tried to explain politely that we were new and hadn't planted the tree ourselves. She didn't care at all. She went on about how it was blocking her sunlight and probably lowering her property value. My girlfriend stepped in and told her nicely that it was a beautiful tree and we wanted to keep it. The woman got even more aggressive and warned us not to get too attached because she had connections. Then she just walked away, leaving us standing there wondering what the hell had just happened. We thought maybe she was just having a bad day, but oh boy, were we wrong. Over the next few weeks, this woman became our personal nightmare. She'd show up at the worst times, always complaining about our tree. It didn't matter if we were eating dinner, working in the garden, or just trying to relax on our porch. She'd walk over with some new complaint. One time she came over screaming that she couldn't believe we were keeping that monstrosity in our yard. I told her it was a beautiful tree that had been there for generations. She yelled back that she didn't care and couldn't bear the sight of it because it was an eyesore. The thing is, I could see right through her act. This wasn't really about blocked views or property values. She was jealous, plain and simple. She couldn't stand that we had something beautiful that she didn't have. The way she'd stare at that tree with pure hatred in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. My grandparents had actually warned me about her years ago. Apparently, she'd been harassing them too, but my grandpa had always managed to keep her in line. They told me about this one time when she'd actually trespassed onto our property to yell about the tree, and my grandpa had to grab his shotgun to scare her off. He was a quiet man, but he didn't mess around when it came to protecting what was his. Now that my grandparents were gone, she probably thought we'd be easy targets. Maybe she figured without my grandpa's watchful eye, she could finally get rid of the tree she hated so much. For months, we dealt with her constant harassment. She'd call the city, trying to get them to force us to cut it down. She'd leave nasty notes in our mailbox. She even tried to get other neighbors to join her crusade, but thankfully, most people thought she was crazy. Then came that night that changed everything. I was sound asleep when this urgent pounding on our door woke me up. My heart was racing when I stumbled out of bed, completely disoriented. My neighbors from next door were at the door, panic written all over their faces. They shouted that our tree was on fire, their voices filled with fear and urgency. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand and we rushed outside to see our beautiful pink ivory tree engulfed in flames. The fire was massive, reaching high into the night sky. Within minutes, fire trucks were everywhere. The whole street lit up with flashing lights, and the sound of water being sprayed at full force. I watched helplessly when firefighters battled the blaze, trying to save what they could. They managed to keep the fire from spreading to nearby houses and cars, but our tree was destroyed, completely gone. I started crying right there on the street, thinking about all the stories my grandparents had told me, all the memories tied to that tree. When the firefighters worked to put out the last of the flames, the arson investigation unit showed up. The captain took one look at the scene and told us this didn't look natural. He said there was something off about this fire. I felt this surge of anger. Someone had deliberately done this. But who would want to destroy our tree? Deep down, I think I already knew the answer. The next few days were intense. The investigators confirmed it was arson when they found evidence of accelerants and multiple ignition points. Someone had definitely set out to destroy our tree on purpose. The whole neighborhood was talking about it. Everyone was shocked that something like this could happen in our quiet little area. But then the investigation took an amazing turn. Our neighbor across the street had recently installed security cameras, and when the investigators checked the footage, they found exactly what they were looking for. There she was, clear on camera, our entitled neighbor sneaking out in the middle of the night with what looked like a gas can. The footage showed everything. Her pouring gasoline all over our tree, lighting it on fire, then hurrying back to her house like nothing happened. She thought she was so smart, but those cameras caught every single detail. The police arrested her the next day. I have to admit, watching her get handcuffed and put in the back of a police car was pretty satisfying after months of her harassment. The trial was like something out of a TV show. The prosecutor laid out all the evidence, the security footage, the accelerant residue, witness testimonies about her months of complaints. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was just frustrated about property values, but nobody was buying it. When they played that security footage in court showing her deliberately destroying our family tree, I saw several jury members shake their heads in disgust. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. She had planned this. The judge didn't hold back during sentencing. He said the defendant's actions were calculated and malicious. He explained that she had destroyed property that held deep sentimental value to us, all because of her own petty jealousy. She got 1 year in prison and had to pay us $100,000 in compensation for the tree. Apparently, that old pink ivory tree was worth way more than any of us realized. The money helped, but it couldn't replace what we'd lost. After she went to prison, the whole neighborhood felt different. People were friendlier, more relaxed. It was like this dark cloud had been lifted. We used part of the compensation money to plant new trees in our yard, not to replace what we'd lost, but to start fresh. My girlfriend and I are still in that house, and we love it more than ever. I'm 39 and married to an amazing man who's worked his way up to a comfortable position at his company. We've been blessed financially, which has allowed me to focus on raising our kids and giving back to our community through volunteer work. It's been a good life, and I thought I had raised my children to respect others and understand different ways of contributing to society. My oldest son is 22 and recently got married to a woman who couldn't be more different from our family's values. She's all about business and making money, which isn't necessarily bad, but she uses it as a weapon to put others down. From the moment she joined our family, she's made it clear that she thinks anyone who doesn't bring home a paycheck is worthless. The problem started right after their wedding. I had carefully selected a beautiful gift for them, a set of handcrafted pottery from a local artisan that I knew they'd both appreciate. When I presented it to her at their reception, beaming with pride, she looked at it and told me coldly in front of other guests that the gift was just from my husband, since she knew it wasn't my money that paid for it. I was stunned. Here I was, trying to welcome her into our family with open arms, and she was already dismissing me like some kind of freeloader. But I swallowed my pride and tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe she was just nervous or making a bad joke. Things only got worse from there. Every time we had family gatherings, she'd find ways to slip in little digs about my lifestyle. When family members would ask about my volunteer work with the food bank and literacy program, she'd jump in and say that it was easy to volunteer when you don't have any real responsibilities or a real job to worry about. Watching my son just sit there and say nothing was painful. I raised him better than that. I taught him to stand up for people, especially family members, but whenever his wife would make these comments, he'd just look uncomfortable and change the subject. I tried talking to him privately about it several times. I would tell him that I needed him to understand that his wife's comments about my choices were hurtful and disrespectful. He would always respond that she didn't mean anything by it, that she was just different from us and came from a family where everyone works traditional jobs. When I would explain that this didn't give her the right to insult me in my own home and that I'd worked hard my entire life, first raising the kids and now helping our community, he would ask me to just ignore it because he didn't want there to be tension between us. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Each comment was like a paper cut, and they were adding up to something much more painful. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when we decided to host a family dinner. I spent the entire day preparing, making homemade pasta, my famous garlic bread, and a tiramisu from scratch. I love cooking for my family, and it's one of the ways I show my love and care. The kitchen smelled amazing, and I was genuinely excited to have everyone together. My son and his wife arrived first. I was standing at the stove stirring the sauce and humming to myself when she walked into the kitchen. She stood there for a moment, watching me work, and then told me that no wonder I could make a home-cooked meal from scratch since I didn't do anything else with my day anyway. Something inside me just snapped. All the months of biting my tongue, all the times I'd let her comments slide for the sake of family peace, all the disrespect I'd endured in my own home, it all came rushing to the surface. I told her that I'd had enough of her constant disrespect. I explained that she came into my home, ate my food, and had the audacity to insult me while I was cooking for her. I made it clear that I didn't care what her opinion was of my life choices, but that she would show me respect in my house, or she could get the hell out. For once, she was completely speechless. Her mouth actually fell open like she couldn't believe someone had finally stood up to her. But then, in a move that absolutely floored me, she started crying. Not just tearing up, full-on sobbing like I had physically attacked her. She asked through her tears how I could talk to her like that, claiming she was just making conversation. I told her that making conversation wasn't what she'd been doing. She'd been making snide remarks about my life for months, and that wasn't conversation but deliberate cruelty. She tried to say she didn't mean it and was just trying to explain herself, but I wasn't having it. I told her no, that I was done with her excuses and that she needed to leave my house right then. She kept crying and trying to explain herself, but I wasn't having it. I walked to the front door and held it open for her. My son tried to intervene, but I was determined. I told him that she had disrespected me for the last time and that she could come back when she was ready to apologize and treat me with basic human decency. After she left, my son absolutely lost it on me. We had a screaming match right there in my kitchen while the pasta sauce burned on the stove. He yelled that I was being a huge jerk and that she was his wife and I had just thrown her out like garbage. I told him that I had thrown out someone who was treating me like garbage, and there was a difference. When he insisted she was just joking around, I explained that those weren't jokes but calculated insults designed to make me feel small and worthless. But he stormed out too, leaving me standing alone in my kitchen with tears in my eyes and a ruined dinner. Here's where the story gets interesting though. 2 days later, my husband came home from work with some fascinating information. It turns out that his wife had been telling people at her office about our fight, but her version was quite different. She was painting herself as the victim of a crazy mother-in-law who attacked her for no reason. But here's the thing. One of her co-workers is married to a guy who volunteers with me at the food bank. When this co-worker heard the story, she knew it didn't sound right because she knew me as someone who's patient and kind. So she started asking questions. My husband told me that I wasn't going to believe what he'd learned. Apparently, my daughter-in-law had been bragging at work about how she puts me in my place whenever she comes over to our house. When I asked what he meant, he explained that, according to what he'd heard, she'd been telling her co-workers that she enjoyed making comments about my lifestyle because she thought stay-at-home wives were parasites on society and she'd been making it sound like some kind of game to her. That information changed everything. It proved that her behavior wasn't just thoughtless or cultural differences. It was deliberate and malicious. Armed with this knowledge, my husband and I decided to take action. We invited my son over for dinner, just the three of us. When he arrived, we sat him down and my husband told him that we needed to talk about his wife's behavior and what we'd recently discovered. We told him everything, not just about the incident in the kitchen, but about the pattern of deliberate disrespect and how she'd been bragging about it to her co-workers. When he said that couldn't be true and that she wouldn't do that, I told him that I'd raised him to be a good judge of character and asked him to look at the evidence and the pattern. I explained that this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It took some time, but eventually, the truth sank in. My son realized that his wife had been deliberately trying to hurt me and he'd been enabling it by not standing up to her. The real comeuppance came a week later. My son confronted his wife about what we'd learned, and she initially tried to deny it. But when he told her that we had witnesses to her bragging at work, she broke down and admitted everything. But here's something even better. It turns out that her behavior at work had been just like toxic, her behavior toward me. Her co-workers had started documenting her comments and complaints about various people, including me. When this all came to light, her supervisor called her in for a meeting about creating a hostile work environment. My son called me the next day and told me that he owed me the biggest apology of his life. He said he couldn't believe he'd let her treat me that way, and couldn't believe he'd called me names and defended her behavior. I told him that I forgave him, but that we needed to establish some boundaries going forward. He agreed absolutely and said that she'd already agreed to attend counseling, both individually and with him. He also mentioned that she wanted to come over and apologize to me in person. When she came to apologize, it was clear that the experience had shaken her. Losing respect at work and nearly damaging her marriage had finally made her understand that actions have results. She told me she was so sorry for how she treated me and that she was wrong, was no excuse for her behavior. She admitted that she'd been taking out her own insecurities on me, which was completely unfair. I told her that I appreciated her apology, but that moving forward, I expected to be treated with the same respect I showed her. She said absolutely, and that she understood if it took time for me to trust her again. The situation at her work didn't improve much for her. Word had gotten around about her attitude problem, and she ended up leaving that job a few months later. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.